Hello and welcome to NEWAS. This is our second video in the series of Ancient India Prelims PYQ discussion. We are discussing the Prelims PYQ questions theme-wise starting from 2014 to 2023, and the theme for today is Ancient Indian Terminologies. In the last video we discussed about sites. Now we have two questions for discussion today. One is from the 2016 UPSC Prelims and the other is from the 2023 UPSC Prelims. Let's go into the questions one by one. The first question, in the context of history of India, considering the following pairs. Consider the following pairs. Now, if you look at the question, it's given us a match the following. You have three terms on the left hand side and you have their explanations on the right hand side. So it's a classical terminology based question. You just have to figure out what this particular term means. That's it. Now, the first term is eripati and the explanation given is land revenue which was set apart for the maintenance of the village tank. So it's a form of land revenue and it is set apart specifically for village tank. That's the first term. Second term, tani use, and the explanation is villages donated to a single Brahmin or a group of Brahmins. The third term is gatikas, colleges generally attached to the temples. Now, what we can decipher from these terms without going into the content part. These three are fact-based questions. Without knowing the clear fact, it's difficult to arrive at a conclusion, but let's look if we can have something out of it. Now, if you look at the second term, tani use, it has a term called ur. Now, ur is a very familiar term when we study Sangam literature. Ur means village. You have ur and PRE-ur, which is big village. Now, look at the explanation. It talks about a village itself. Villages donated to a single Brahmin or a group of Brahmins. Now, we can connect it with village, but we have a general term that is given for a Brahmin village, which is very famous in the ancient Indian context, which is called Brahmadeya. So, Brahmadeya being a familiar term to us, we can in fact negate this statement. If that is the case, option B can be negated and option A and option C can be eliminated. In that case, B and D remains the only options and 3 will automatically be correct. And 3 is colleges generally attached to temples. And we don't know much about the term of Gatika, for which we don't have any negation possibilities. So let's look at option number 1. It is called eripati. Here again it talks about a land revenue which was set apart for the maintenance of village tank. It's not a very familiar term and we cannot derive anything out of the term. It's a single term. So here you have to take a 50-50 chance. Now let's go into the solutions. And when we look at the solution, as I said, the idea behind Tanur is the same. It is a ur that is distinct. It's a distinct revenue unit of the Sangam period, specifically the Chola administration. So some villages, very large villages, they are administered as a single unit separately. So they are maintained as a distinct revenue unit and they are called urs. If you know the Tamil meaning of the term Tani, it means distinct. So tani ur means a distinct revenue unit. Now, given that definition, look at the definition of Brahmadeya. It's the definition that is given there. So this is how UPSC replaces definitions and give you options. Villages donated to a single Brahmin or a group of Brahmin is called Brahmadeya, which is a term that should be familiar to us from the NCERTs. Now, if you look at the definition of eripati, the definition given there is correct. Special kind of land donated by individuals, and the other name of this term is tank lands. So if you look at the direct translation of this term, eripati means tank lands. So these are lands that are donated for the village tank and the revenue that is generated from this land is used for the maintenance of the tank itself. So basically eripati means a tank land. So this is some fact that you have to by heart yourself because there is no other way to tackle this concept. So eripati means tank land. Now if you look at gatika. Now, Gatika is a term that goes together with the idea of mathas. So, matha, you know, is a place of learning. Gatika is also a center of learning. And usually, Gatikas are attached to temples. So, donations that are given to such learning centers are also called by the same name, Gatika. So, if you look at the definition that is given there, colleges generally attached to temples stands correct. As a result, Taniur becomes a wrong explanation and eripati and Gatika becomes correct and option D is the correct answer for this. Now let's look at the second question, which is from the 2023 prelims. Now here you have just one concept and you have 4 explanations, unlike a match the following. Match the following is both a boon and bane at the same time. Now here you have to come up to the specific conclusion. The term here is Vattakirital, and the question has a Q, which is the question itself talks about the term being from Sangam poems. Now look at the options. First option is kings employing women bodyguards. Second, learned persons assembling in royal courts to discuss religious and philosophical matters. Third, young girls keeping watch over agricultural fields and driving away birds and animals. Last option, a king defeated in a battle committing ritual suicide by starving himself to death. Now, if you look at the options without knowing the term Vattakirital is a Sangam term. You don't have anything specific to derive out of it. If you look at the two options, the first option is concerning women. It talks about keeping women bodyguards. And the third option is about young girls keeping watch over agricultural fields. Now these two options are about women. Now when you look at the Sangam literature, or you just look at the Vedic literature, we have specific prominent names of women from early Vedic period, like Abala. So whenever there is a time period in history where women were given prominence, so we study it specifically, and we don't have anything that specific from Sangam literature like this, whether about women bodyguards or about girls watching fields. In that regard, these two options will have less weightage in consideration. Now you know that Sangam poems are about love on one side and valor on the other side. Now here is an option you can connect with the idea of valor, because king defeated in the battle committing suicide is something that we often see in movies, something that can be traced even to the modern times. In our modern battles, kings used to do this because it's a matter of honor. Now this option has higher weightage when you consider like that. Now without knowing the clear fact, it's always a risk to take such chances, but I'm just giving you the kind of logic through which you can approach questions like this. If you look at the answer key, Vattakirital, the option D stands as the correct answer. It is a matter of honor. It's a practice of a Sangamara practice, as the question itself talks about. It's a practice where kings commit suicide to uphold their honor. They do it either alone or as a group. So if a king and his group is captured after being defeated, they starve themselves to death, which is a kind of suicide. And naturally this is done to avoid humiliation. They want to uphold their prestige and honor. And it has two other terms also, Vadakirital and Vadakiruttal. So it's a slight difference in the phonetics, nothing significant. The term is same, Vadakirital, and it means ritual suicide of a king after being captured in the war. Now if you look at the terminology questions as a whole, if you're familiar with a good number of terminologies and you're familiar with the history of this particular themes, you can have some logic or some deduction into the terms. Otherwise, these will be very factual for you. Even after knowing these themes and general trends, still these questions requires an amount of chance if you are to deduct these questions. So keep these things in mind while you attempt the questions of ancient Indian terminologies. We'll come back with yet another series of ancient Indian PYQs. Thank you for listening.